Lesson 62, Pythagorean Theorem 10-4. We're going to revisit Pythagorean Theorem. This is probably something that you covered in the past, but we're along the lines of radicals and square roots, so we'll bring it back up. Biggest thing for a refresher here, hypotenuse is the longest side of the triangle. Okay, when you hear Pythagorean Theorem, you need to memorize the equation. This is what should pop into your head. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you look down here, A and B are your legs. They're two smaller sides of a right triangle. Pythagorean Theorem deals with right triangles. Opposite of your right triangle is side C, known as your hypotenuse, the longest side. So we're going to look at this. The first thing that I do in each question is identify side C, the longest side. And it's, again, opposite of your right angle. So in this case, side C would be 15. So you need to plug in the other values in for A, B, and C. Make sure you square them. A and B are interchangeable. It doesn't matter if you use x for A or 12 for A. Make sure you square it. So x squared plus, 12 squared plus x squared, and our C value is 15, so 15 squared. After doing our computation, we have 144 plus x squared equals 225. Get x alone, so we'd subtract by 144 to both sides, giving us x squared equals 81. Here you'd have to take the square root of both sides to get rid of the square. So after you square root both sides, you'd find out that x equals 9 miles. Now, remember, when you do square root, it is plus a negative 9. It is positive 9 and negative 9, but you would not put negative plus negative 9 as your answer. Reason being, this is a side length, and your side length cannot be negative 9. Example 2, I'm going to have you go ahead and work through real quick. Again, first thing you should do is identify side C. Side C is x. So go ahead and give it a shot real quick, and then check back in. All right, now that you're back, you should have plugged in 15.2 squared and 7.3 squared and x squared. Computation, 231.04 and 53.29. Add those together, we get 284.33. Now we would square root both sides to get rid of the square, so x would be alone. And remember, we need to round to the 10th, so we get x is approximately 16.9 yards. Example 3, very similar to example 1 and 2. The only difference is that we are going to actually now leave our answer in radical form, so no decimals. Again, identify side C. Side C is 15. So I substitute in x squared and square root 37, and that is squared. I wind up with x squared plus, well, square root 37 times square root 37 is 37, and 15 squared is 225. Subtract 37 from both sides, leaving you with x squared equals 188. Square root both sides to get rid of the square. Now when you square root 188, you can break down the square root of 188 into 2 times 2 times 47. So you're able to factor out a 2. This is the simplified radical form. So your answer is x equals 2 square root 47, and that would be centimeters. Example 4, again, go ahead and pause it and come back, and we'll double check with my work here. Again, identify side C, which is x. So go ahead and pause it. All right, now that you're back, we have 10 squared plus 8 squared equals x squared, which would give us 100 plus 64 equals x squared, giving us 164 equals x squared. The square root of 164, you're able to factor out a 2, so you're left with x is equal to 2 square root 41, and that would be yards. In example 5, remember I mentioned that Pythagorean Theorem deals with our right triangle. So basically the converse is basically saying that if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, it is a right triangle. So when a squared plus b squared equals c squared, if they equal one another and they balance out, you have a right triangle. If not, it is not a right triangle. So this first scenario, here would be your right angle if it is a right angle. So opposite would be side C. So we use 5 in for side C. So 3 squared plus 3 squared equals 5 squared. Computation there, 9 plus 9 equals 25. 18 is not equal to 25. These are not equal. Since they are not equal, this is not a right triangle. Example 6. I'm going to have you go ahead and give example 6 a shot. It's very similar to example 5. Now, when you come across this, the first thing that I would do is you need to determine what is side C. What is the longest side? Because that is side C, your hypotenuse. I would find out what the square root of 186 is, and it's approximately 13.6. If you look up here, 13.6 would be your longest side. Therefore, the square root of 186 is side C. Go ahead, pause, and work through it. We would plug in for A and B. Square root 17 squared plus 13 squared, and the square root of 186 squared. We have 17 plus 169 equals 186. Add the left side. We get 186 equals 186. Since they are equivalent, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This is a right triangle. In example 7 and example 8, you're going to determine what type of triangle it is, whether it be right. Remember, a right triangle is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Or if it's acute or obtuse. Now, if you look at this, if your c squared value is less than, it's acute. If your c squared value is greater than, it's obtuse. And this is all in relation to pretty much the equation for Pythagorean theorem. Again, here's where your right angle would be. Across from it is side C. So we're going to determine what type of triangle that is. Plug your values in. I like to keep a gap here so I can put my inequality sign here if it's a less than or greater than, or if it may be equal to. Square root of 5 squared is 5. We have 2 square root 2 squared. That's basically saying 2 square root 2 times 2 square root 2. So you'd multiply your coefficients. 2 times 2 is 4. Multiply your radicand. 2 times 2 is 4. Square root 13 squared is 13. I found out that the square root of 4 is 2. So 4 times 2 would give me 8. 5 plus 8. And then we have 13. So we would have 13 is actually equal to 13. This would be a right triangle. Example 8. Determine the type of triangle this is. Again, if this is a right angle, this is where it would be. So there's my side C. Square root 95 squared and square root 26 squared is something in comparison to 14 squared, which would give me 95 plus 26, and this would give me 196. Add those together. I have 121 on the left side and 196 on the right side. Here's my inequality sign. So A and B is less than C squared. These are squared. So C is greater than. Remember, if you look in your instructions above, that if your C squared value is greater than A squared plus B squared, it is obtuse. So this is an obtuse triangle. Example number 9. You're going to find the area of the triangle. Here's the triangle that's given. In order to find the area of the triangle, you need to know how to find the area of the triangle, which is 1/2 base times height. So we need the base value and we need the height value multiplied together times 1/2. Notice we don't have the height and we do not have the entire base. So you need to break this down, and basically I took this triangle right here so I can find my height. In order to do so, I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. Here's my right angle. Here's 16. 16 is side C. Do your computation. We get 121 plus x squared equals 256. Subtract 121 from both sides. We have x squared equals 135. Again, square root both sides to get x alone. Notice it says round to the nearest tenth. So I would come up with x is approximately 11.6 units. Now what I just found is the height of that triangle. So what I did over here is I took the other half of the triangle. I have 21, we have x, which is unknown. We do know the height, we just figured that out, which is 11.6 units. Again, using the Pythagorean theorem, we can figure out the other piece of the base. Side 21 is side C. Your computation, 11.6 squared is 134.56 plus x squared equals 441. Subtract 134.56 from both sides. We get x squared equals 306.44. Again, get x alone, so we would square root both sides. Rounded to the nearest tenth, we'd come up with x is approximately 17.5 units. Now we found the other piece of the base. Remember, the whole picture here is to find the area of the triangle. The area of the triangle is 1/2 base times height. So what I have here is, here's my triangle basically above. I put in my other dimensions that I figured out. I figured out my height was 11.6. I figured out from here to there my base is 17.5. So basically my entire base of the triangle is 28.5 units. Now I can substitute into my equation for finding the area of a triangle. 1/2 times base, your base is 28.5. Your height is 11.6. And again, after you do your computation here, we want to round to the nearest tenth. And we came up with your area is 165.3 units squared. This concludes lesson 62, 10-4 Pythagorean Theorem.